Hello, and welcome to Realms Beyond by Saris Games. Today we're taking a look at the classes. So many people consider the classes to be the most important choice of the game. And today I'm going to go over the first 4, and I'll do the next 3 after that in a separate video. So let's start with the barbarian. High hit die and decent but not very good skill points. Better than all the other fighting classes, actually. Medium armor, up to medium armor, and simple martial weapons, but not heavy armor, and not tower shields. Fast movement, very useful, especially if you want someone to be able to just go straight to the back. Rage, I've already demonstrated, very useful, buffing yourself in very effective ways. It just gets better and better with tireless rage and mighty rage and greater rage here. Trap sense, the uncanny dodge line, which is pretty good because, I mean, every combat has a first round, no matter how fast you actually do it, so this will always help you in those situations. And of course, will save bonuses, which of course stacks with everything else, like your rage and any wisdom modifiers you have. You'll probably want that, because being under control is not good. So let's look at origin. Because what you'll find is that your biography is separated into 2 parts. Your descent part, which is these things, and then your class part. So we're going over the class part, not the descent part for now. So I'm from Cormac. I'm a barbarian. What is that like? Well, I come from hillsides, sparsely populated ones. I'm trained in large axes and greatswords. I have passion and conviction. So already you can see, okay, there's like a rural population and a city-dwelling population. What does that mean? Just very interesting details like that. But if you're from Vinland, it changes completely what that's like for you. Glory in combat is, the heart is driven by desire. Searching for worthy opponents. This is very different from the entry in Cormac. So just really cool stuff there. No, there's no barbarian there, but there is barbarians here. Well, they don't have entries on all the classes done yet, so some of them are missing. I think it's also missing here. Yes. So now let's talk about the Cleric. The Cleric, in my opinion, is a problematic class, not mechanically, but for cultural reasons. Because not all people who worship look or do things in this light. Not all worshippers and clerics, or people who do so and intervene in others' affairs, not all of them wear heavy armor, or use simple weapons, or turn the undead. And this has always been one of the sticking points of the cleric class for me. Because unlike a fighter, you can very easily imagine in any setting, any cultural setting, like you can imagine what a fighter's like in Egypt, or Mesopotamia, or South Africa, the Zuzu there, and Australia, and the Aboriginals. You can just imagine very easily what that fighter might be like. It's much harder to do that with the cleric, because what you have to actually do is, when you're trying to imagine a sadhu in India, they specifically don't ever, or their they're exposing themselves to different forms of asceticism. They're not going to be wearing heavy armor or using simple weapons or even going out adventuring to get money. That's just not what they're like. So you have to think, what does it mean to be a cleric in different cultures? And this game does have a solution. I applaud it for its ability to create divergence in the cleric class, the same way you could say for the other classes, like fighters and wizards, who are easy to imagine in other cultures. Not just a crusader with maces and heavy armor going out and using their powerful miracles to drive off evil forces. So let's look at the Cormac. So they don't have an entry for Cormac, but since we do know what Cormac is like, if you choose Cormac, you probably worship the one god from the Church of Holy Virtues. So it's a monotheistic option, or at least a henotheistic option, since this is a fantasy setting, and, well, other gods are proven to exist through the miracles of their clergy. So just the idea of thou shalt have no other gods before me, rather than there are no other gods, is probably the more prevalent idea here due to the restrictions of a fantasy setting. So even though it's that case, henotheism is still very much you choose one god to worship. So again, very good. But what about the other options? What about Cadinland? They don't just worship one god, right? You're correct. Let's see. She closed her eyes and prayed to the gods for assistance, thanking the gods for this miraculous salvation. Plural, multiple, pantheon. But the interesting here is that when you choose this one, you don't worship one deity. You worship the whole group, or at least some of the group. Again, this is one of the problems of the cleric class, because it seems to imply in your character sheet, usually, that you pick a cleric, and you pick one deity, and you pick your domains related to that deity, and that's it. And it's not actually how it works in real life. So, because they're inspired from history in real life, they have to change things, and that's good, because it makes sense. Why should you worship just Odin? Let's just use real Norse mythology for a moment here. Why should you worship Odin only when you should be worshiping, if you're trying to do some sneaky endeavor, you should be worshiping Loki in that moment. Or if you're trying to guard the, or you're assisting in blessing the land, you should be worshiping the fertility goddess, Frigg, in that moment. Things like that. It's just, it should be relevant for the context you're in. That's what this implies. Very cool. Perinia. So, again, there are different ways that you can worship. So in this case, they're talking about the Ophidian mysteries. Mystery cults are a different approach to organized religion. Again, this is vastly different from what you would expect from a cleric class. And yes, this is probably a reference to the Eleusinian mysteries, who worshipped a specific goddess, in this case, Hestia. And no one knows truly what went along down there, but mystery cults were a thing back then, and this is a very good way to introduce a different kind of cleric. It's fascinating. So if you don't want to be like an organized religion cleric like from Cormac, you could choose Perinia and be like, oh no, I have mysterious knowledge, and I'm part of a cult. That's just such a different flavor, and it's great. and then Subagirar. Yes, and in Subagirar, it's a complete class of its own. It's a social class. Again, a different flavor. It's not just an occupation. It's a social class. So in this case, the Balatu priestesses. And there are multiple gods again. And as I said before, maybe you don't worship all the gods all the time. In fact, some of them are probably not even relevant. Maybe the god of luck is never interested in having clerics who go out and intervene in others' affairs. Maybe the goddess of health is just interested in healing, and their priestesses just don't go out and do that sort of thing. Because that's more realistic. That's much more in line with how it actually happened. And then let's look at Shint. So they do have an undead problem. So in their case, they do have... So the undead turning does make sense in their case. You're training into Tutku. They worship ancestors in addition to various gods. See, this is another style. This is another style of what does it mean to believe and to draw power from that belief, or to draw power from another source. You're drawing your power from your ancestors in this case. This is a different style. This is a different thing. This has different implications about what it means. This is all extremely nice, by the way. This is vastly improves the cultural context of just a cleric class. So, fighters. High hit die, low skill points, just like the cleric. But proficient in everything under the sun, except for exotic weapons. And they get lots of feats. Whole bunch of feats. So, it's straightforward, nothing really to discuss. So yeah. And I should probably change the name. Royal Army of Cormac, what's that? Mercenary, soldiers of fortune as they call them, escorting goblin dens. It's all very interesting, these details that they put in here. It's just so nice to say, oh, what is all this? It encourages you to choose this land. Kvinland. Ah, so you leave it and you go to a Cornish city and then you learn about it. Interesting. Because the barbarian didn't do that, but the fighter did in this country. Very nice. Perinia. Silver Shields. Famous mercenary company. And they probably worship a god of war, even if it doesn't say that here, because hoplite and all that. And demons. So maybe if you're a fighter in this, you're used to fighting against demons. So you're a sellsword. Again, a soldier of fortune. Lots of details. Eshner, Brishamsi, Sumatre, Kurumaku. What is all this? This is very cool stuff that you can latch onto. Hooks that your character knows about, and you can use it in-game as you roleplay it, for example. You know, if you're into that thing. Shint. Let's see. So yeah, they're dealing with the Exodus and the fact that they're facing off against an undead horde. So they want to learn martial skills because they're facing off things. Orcish patrols. We know they live in the wildlands. Yeah, very interesting details. So now let's do the Paladin. Decent hit die, low skill points. Most proficiencies except exotic weapons and tower shields. They have Detect and Smite Evil. These are related to their lawful good alignment. We don't know how that's implemented yet. Divine Grace. This is why Charisma is very good. You want that to be like 18, giving you +4 on all your saving throws. This is very nice. Lay on Hands. You can heal wounds. Whore of Courage. Immune to fear. Immune to disease if you have divine health. Turn undead, and of course spells eventually. And remove disease once per week. Oh, and more over time. So very powerful class, very defensive class, but also really good against evil, which is probably differently defined than what you might expect. Okay. I don't think there's a lot of entries. Oh, sorry, that's the fighter. Because they don't have paladins there. Aha, see? So here's a paladin entry that references something I said earlier, which is they might not call themselves paladins. They call themselves Paladin, and they worship a specific goddess, not the whole pantheon. This is just another cool detail that they do with religion and the way people believe things works. This is just really interesting. Meditation, visions, far-off lands, and divine intervention. So here's a reference to divine intervention. Very nice. Ancient doesn't have a paladin. So yeah, those are the 4 classes that I mentioned so far. I'll go over the other 3 later. But yeah, what do you think of all this? What do you think of the differences in the biographies? How they reflect the kind of fighter that you are, the kind of cleric that you are, the kind of barbarian that you are. And what it all means, the trappings, the paraphernalia, the various differences and how you approach the world. It's all just extremely fascinating, and it's really good that they added that into the biographies. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.